Hi, Sarah. Christy is doing the filming of this video, and Kathy is directing it from the side. Okay, so enough of that. Before you get started with your thing, you need to, just as preparation, dress like you are on your way to a day hike. You're going to come with your backpack and shoes and everything, and you'll see what you need to put in the backpack as we go along. You're going to set up a chart or with the 7 principal things that I'm having printed and that you're going to pick up, so that you can just kind of, as you go through each principle, you can just flip. These are the child language ones, so they sound a little different than your regular ones. The other thing that you need to get ahead, you said you were going to do your cloak, so you'll wear your cape and all, so you're going to do your invisible thing. And then you do need some trash items. That's the other thing that you need to have, like just some trash wrappers in your trash bag. Can you hear Christine talking? Or not Christine, whoever that is in the background, but anyway. So when you come out, the first thing you're going to do is just kind of introduce yourself to the kids and just welcome them. And that's where you probably want to do your invisible thing. You know, talk about how did they know how you're invisible in the forest. And you're going to teach all them to be invisible too. Ask them who's been hiking or camping, and if they have a favorite place they'd like to go and visit when they hike or they camp. And then you can just kind of ask if anyone knows how to leave no trace or to be invisible in the outdoors. And you can explain that, you know, leave no trace is all about being invisible and making good decisions to protect the world around them, and so that other people can enjoy it, and that ask if they know how to maybe to be invisible too. And you're going to start by, remember you're dressed in your hiking gear, you're going to start by removing your outer garments, like you could have a jacket on and maybe gloves and a hat, and let them know that before you left, you checked the weather conditions and you made sure you had the proper clothing and all. You also brought a map. You could pull a map out of your backpack that you reviewed last night when you were planning your routes. And then maybe you could ask them for any other instructions for what they would do to plan some kind of outdoor activity. And all of those activities introduce the first principle, and that's when you can flip the chart, because the first page just says leave no trace. So then you can flip to the first one that says know before you go, because that's basically what that is all about. Then you're going to remove your boots and you're going to brush off any mud from them and explain that while you were out, you encountered some muddy parts of the trail. And then talk about how important it is to stick to the trail even if it is muddy. And then maybe ask them why that might be important. Of course, the answer is, Christy knows now too, because I told her she couldn't leave the trail the other day. Otherwise, you might make the trail wider and possibly damage plants and animals' homes. So that demonstrates the second principle, choose the right path. So you can flip over the chart then to that. Empty your pockets, pull out the trash that you've collected and had, and explain this is your trash from the day, and that you always carry a plastic bag with you to carry out your trash. You can ask them, you know, what kinds of trash they've carried out before, and then, you know, flip over and show the trash chart that's there. Now you're going to begin to unpack your day pack, and you're going to remove those essentials that you have in there, like your compass, your maps, your sunscreen, your hat, and explain these are all part of, you know, the know before you go principle. one thing it said is optional if you have mainly an older kid audience, is you could have a trowel and toilet paper in your backpack too, and tell them that you always look for an outhouse or a porta potty. But sometimes when you're hiking, the kids program refers to it as act like a cat and dig a hole, and that also helps with trash your trash. So depending on if you've got little kids or bigger kids, you can leave that out or not. Then you can talk about how great the views were, and maybe you saw some new spring wildflowers that were popping up, but how you knew that you shouldn't take the leaves or flowers, so you brought along the camera so you could pull out your camera from the backpack. And even if you don't have a camera, it's best always to leave what you find. So you'll flip the next chart, and that's the next principle, leave what you find. And you might have them offer some suggestions of why that's important. You know, like animals might use the sticks or the leaves or the pine cones, Christy, that you wanted to take the other day for their homes. Or the next person might also enjoy. So that's, you know, some things they might say. Another thing it said to have in the backpack was just that I know you've got your little stove, so you could have your stove in there, and explain that you'd use it to cook a meal instead of making a campfire. And of course, talking about how an improper campfire can be dangerous, scar rocks or kill plants or trees. And then you might want to throw in there whatever your park rules are about fire too. Maybe say something about it's not a good idea to burn your trash or food when you're camping. And so that's the principle, be careful with fire. So at some point you'll flip over that chart and show that one, and you know, talk about maybe why you don't burn food or trash. And of course that's because the trash doesn't always burn, might attract wildlife and things like that to human food. Then the next thing you're going to pull out of your backpack, you'll have binoculars in there. And you can talk about how you saw some really cool wildlife, doe and elk, rabbit, whatever, in a nearby meadow, and you didn't want to disturb them or frighten them, so you stayed back and you used your binoculars to get a better look. And another example that they gave was if you come across maybe some hungry little critters like chipmunks or something, you don't feed them, and you might want to ask them why. Of course, human food is unhealthy for animals. It changes the way they find food naturally, blah, blah, blah. So these are all talking about the principle, respect wildlife. So at some point we can flip that over to respect wildlife. And now the backpack should be empty, and you can talk about the last one. The last one is, what is it? Be kind to other visitors. Be kind to other visitors. So you can talk about some of the different kinds of trail users, like mountain bikers and people riding horses and other hikers, and talk about how you always do your best to be kind to other visitors. And so that means that your actions don't hurt anybody or disturb anybody or annoy anybody. You know, an example, I didn't yell to my buddy or make loud noises. When sharing the path with horses, you stopped to one side of the trail, said hello to the rider in a quiet voice. You know, you might talk with them about that. So those then are the 7 principles. And then at the end, if you have time, there was that game that we were thought about having them do. To see how the game they're going to play an activity to see how well they can be invisible in the outdoors. And that was the one called Okay, No Way. And there's those cards in the kit that have okay and no way situations on them. And so if it's an okay situation, they shout okay. If it's a no way situation, they can shout out no way. And so, you know, after you go through each one, you can just kind of explain why or why not it's okay or not okay. Another way to do the game is if you've got a lot of kids, you can divide them in half and have them form a line facing each other, kind of like Red Rover. And so that's where they had in the directions that you need cones, because you'd have like a line of cones behind each other. But you don't really need that. You can just like kind of draw a line. But you read out the scenario cards again. If it's one team is the no way team, one team is the okay team, and so depending on if it's an okay or a no way situation, that team runs and chases the other team back to their line, and then they become a part of that team if they catch them. But if you just do it where you read out the scenarios and they shout out okay or no way, that would be good as well. Then there was a wrap-up at the end, and just kind of quick go through the leave no trace principles again. Ask about questions. Congratulate them on being invisible too, now that they know the principles. You talked then about having them make a trash bag at the end if there was extra time. So that'd be something maybe you could have, if you wanted to, at the end, have ready to do. So, you know, when I first started talking, it talked about that you were just getting ready to go out on a hike, and then as I read it, I was thinking it sounded like you were just returning from a hike, so rather than getting ready to go out. So you might want to start out with that thought in mind too, that you just returned from a day hike and you were sharing all this with them. So, all right, that is the end. Text me if you have questions. Love you.